People think evil comes with a scream, a gunshot, or a knife in the dark, but that's not true. Evil is quieter than that. It slips through the cracks of kindness, seeps into exhaustion, and waits until the right moment to whisper in your ear. For Emily Carter, a 30-year-old nurse with tired eyes and a hopeful smile, evil didn't start with violence. It started with silence. She was the kind of woman who remembered birthdays, who picked up extra shifts so others could rest, who said, "It's okay, I'll handle it," even when her bones ached and her spirit begged her to stop. People loved her for her kindness, but kindness, when stretched too thin, can break. Tonight, as she walked home from the hospital, the city felt unusually heavy. The streetlights hummed above her, buzzing faintly, and the air was damp from earlier rain. She clutched her bag tighter against her chest, not because she was afraid of being attacked, but because she was afraid of being seen, really seen. Nobody ever asked Emily if she was okay. They assumed she was. They assumed she always would be. Her apartment was small, tucked into a quiet corner of the city. The walls carried the smell of old paint and dust, and the floor creaked like a tired old man. She dropped her bag by the door, kicked off her shoes, and sank onto the couch. A framed photo of her late mother sat on the table beside her, the edges worn from too much touching. Emily brushed her fingers against the glass. "I'm trying, Mom," she whispered. "But I don't know how. Much longer." Her phone buzzed, a message from her boss. Another shift request. "Emily, can you cover tomorrow? We're short again." She didn't even think before typing back, "Yes, of course." That's who she was, the one who never said no. And yet, when she pressed send, a strange chill crawled up her spine. She didn't recognize the thought at first, but it was there, quiet, sharp, and unsettling. What if I just stopped helping? What if I let someone else suffer for once? She shook her head, forcing it away. "That's not me," she muttered. But the thought had already taken root. The next morning, she stood in the hospital hallway, surrounded by the beeping of machines and the smell of antiseptic. Her coworkers laughed about weekend plans, but Emily didn't join in. She was always there, always dependable, but somehow never truly seen. "Emily, could you grab room 12? "The patient's restless," a doctor called. She nodded. Of course she would. She always did. But when she stepped into the room, she froze. The patient, an elderly man with clouded eyes, glared at her. "You people don't care about us," he spat. "We're just numbers to you." Emily swallowed hard. "I'm here to help." "No, you're not," he cut her off. "You're just another face waiting for me to die." Her chest tightened. She wanted to argue, to scream, but instead she adjusted his blanket and forced a smile. "Rest, sir. You're safe." But inside, something burned. That whisper again, louder this time. Why am I breaking myself for people who don't even see me? When her shift ended, Emily walked out into the night again. Her reflection in the glass hospital doors caught her off guard. She looked older, harder, like someone carrying too many invisible weights. And in her eyes there was something new, a flicker of darkness. Evil hadn't arrived yet, but it had found its way in. Emily woke before sunrise, her alarm cutting through a dream she couldn't remember. She sat up in bed, blinking at the thin strip of light sneaking through her curtains. Her body felt heavy, as if the night had added years to her bones. She rubbed her face, sighed, and whispered the same words she always did. Just one more day. You can do this. But lately, that mantra felt like a lie. She dressed quickly, pulling on her scrubs, hair tied back in a messy knot. In the mirror, she barely recognized herself, skin pale, eyes rimmed with dark circles. She used to smile at her reflection, force a little pep talk before her shift. Now, she just stared and walked away. At the hospital, the day unfolded the same way as always. Endless requests, buzzing machines, impatient families, and the constant demand to be on. Emily moved through the motions with practiced efficiency, but inside she was unraveling. A co-worker, Jenna, approached her during a brief pause in the break room. "Hey, Em, you okay? You've seemed off." Emily forced a small laugh. "I'm fine, just tired." But Jenna's eyes lingered, searching. "You know, you don't always have to carry everything." The words struck her harder than they should have. Carry everything. That's exactly what she was doing. And the truth was, she was tired of carrying. By the time her shift ended, Emily was drained. She skipped dinner, skipped her calls, and sat on the couch in silence. The TV glowed in the background, muted, flashing strangers' lives across her walls. She stared at them, wondering if anyone had ever stared at her life and cared. Her phone buzzed again. Another message. This time from her sister, Lauren. "Em, I need you. Can you watch the kids tomorrow? Just for a few hours." Emily's fingers hovered over the keyboard. Her stomach tightened. She loved her nieces and nephews, but she needed a break. Yet the thought of saying no filled her with guilt. She had never told her family no. She typed, "Sure, I'll be there." Her chest burned. She deleted the message, typed it again, deleted it. Her hand trembled, and finally she set the phone down without answering. That was the first time Emily didn't immediately agree. The first fracture. She lay awake that night, eyes open to the ceiling, thoughts twisting in the dark. The whisper returned, clearer now. "You've given everything, and what do you get back?" "Nothing. Maybe it's time to stop giving." Emily pulled the blanket over her head like a child hiding from monsters. But the truth was, the monster was already inside her, waiting. The next day, she sat in Lauren's living room, watching the kids play. She had said yes after all, too afraid of disappointing anyone. But as the children screamed and toys scattered across the floor, Emily felt hollow. Lauren breezed in, juggling a purse and car keys. "You're a lifesaver, Em." "I'll only be a few hours. Don't know what I'd do without you." Emily smiled weakly. "It's fine, go." When the door shut, she sank into the couch. The kids laughed, their joy filling the room, but Emily couldn't feel it. She only felt invisible. Her phone vibrated again. Another work request. Another plea for help. Another demand on her soul. This time she didn't answer. She tossed the phone aside, closed her eyes, and whispered, "No more." It was soft, barely audible, but it was real. And with that, the silence inside her deepened, not the silence of peace, but the silence before a storm. Emily woke with a weight pressing on her chest, though the room was silent. She sat at the edge of her bed, staring at her phone, dreading the inevitable requests waiting on the other side of the glowing screen. For the first time in years, she didn't reach for it. She just let it sit there, buzzing, ignored. Her heart raced as if she were committing a crime. Ignoring people felt wrong, unnatural, dangerous. But at the same time, she felt something else, a strange spark of freedom. At the hospital, she walked through the halls like a ghost, carrying her clipboard, answering questions, smiling when necessary. But beneath the surface, something in her was changing. She didn't respond as quickly when called. She didn't rush to fix every mistake. She let silence hang a little longer. And she realized nobody noticed. That stung more than she expected. All her years of giving everything, and the moment she pulled back, the world spun on without her. During lunch, Jenna slid into the chair across from her. "You seem different, Em. Lighter, maybe?" Emily blinked. "Lighter? Yeah, like you're finally letting yourself breathe." Jenna smiled. "It's good." Emily forced a nod, but inside, her thoughts twisted. Was that all it took? Just stop trying, and suddenly she seemed better. If she could be lighter by giving less, what would happen if she gave nothing at all? That night, she walked home slower than usual, letting the city's noise wash over her. People laughed in the distance, cars honked, music thudded from a bar around the corner. Life went on, and for once, she didn't feel responsible for any of it. When she reached her apartment, she didn't answer her phone. Calls from work, from Lauren, from friends, all ignored. She sat in silence, drinking tea she didn't even like, staring at the photo of her mother. "I've been good my whole life," she whispered. "And what has it gotten me? Nothing but exhaustion." The photo didn't answer. The following week, Emily began her small rebellions. She showed up late once, claiming traffic. She left early another day, saying she wasn't feeling well. Each time, guilt churned in her stomach, but nothing catastrophic happened. In fact, people barely reacted. It was terrifying. It was liberating. One evening, while charting patient notes, she overheard two doctors laughing about her. "She cover it. She always does," one said. "She's basically the department's doormat," the other chuckled. Emily froze, pen hovering over the paper. Doormat. The word cut sharper than any insult she'd heard in years. She wanted to storm in, scream, defend herself. But instead, she sat very still, letting their words burn into her. Later that night, lying in bed, she replayed it over and over, doormat. That's what they saw her as. Not kind, not generous. Just convenient. Something cracked, not loudly, not suddenly. Just a subtle shift, like the first thread unraveling from a sweater. The next morning, when her boss asked if she could take on another double shift, Emily looked him straight in the eyes and said, "No." The silence that followed was heavier than she expected. Her boss frowned. "Are you sure?" "Yes." Her voice was calm, steady. "I'm not doing it." For once, she didn't explain. She didn't apologize. She didn't bend. And walking away, she felt the strangest thing, power. That night, she sat by her window, looking out at the city. Lights flickered in apartment windows, strangers' lives unfolding in little glowing squares. She wondered if anyone else felt the way she did, tired of carrying, tired of being unseen, tired of being used. She whispered into the empty room, "Maybe it's not about being good anymore. Maybe it's about being something else." The whisper inside her, the one she'd tried to silence, finally answered, yes. Emily's apartment had become quieter than ever. She no longer filled the silence with music or television. She let it sit heavy around her, pressing against her ears like water. At first, it was uncomfortable, an emptiness that reminded her of everything she lacked. But soon, she began to like it. The quiet made her feel untouchable, separate, in control. Her phone still buzzed with messages from work, from Lauren, from friends who wanted favors. Most went unanswered. The guilt that once clawed at her was fading, replaced by something new. Curiosity. How far can I go before they stop asking? At the hospital, people began to notice. "Emily seems different," Jenna whispered once, thinking Emily couldn't hear. "Like she's colder." Emily had heard. She didn't care. In fact, the words lingered like a secret reward, colder, stronger, less of a doormat. One evening, she stayed late charting. The fluorescent lights flickered above her, the hum of machines distant. A patient called weakly from a room down the hall. Normally, she would have rushed to help, but tonight she didn't move. She listened instead, listened to the thin, trembling voice echo in the sterile corridor. Her chest tightened. A battle raged inside her, the urge to help against the urge to ignore. She sat perfectly still, fingers gripping her pen. Finally, another nurse walked by and went in. The patient was fine. No one even noticed she hadn't moved. Emily's breath shook. Relief, guilt, no, something darker. It felt like stepping off a ledge and realizing she could survive the fall. The next week, Emily visited Lauren again. The kids ran wild, toys everywhere, laughter mixing with shrieks. Emily sat on the couch, eyes distant, barely acknowledging them. Can you watch them Friday too?" Lauren asked, rushing between chores. Emily looked up, calm and steady. "No," Lauren froze. "What do you mean, no?" "I mean no, I can't." Lauren blinked, clearly stunned. "You always." "I'm not doing it anymore." Emily cut her off. "I'm tired." The room fell silent except for the children's giggles. Lauren stared at her sister as though she were looking at a stranger. That night, Emily lay in bed replaying the moment. Lauren's shocked expression burned into her mind. Instead of regret, she felt a thrill, a strange satisfaction at disrupting the script she'd been forced to play for so long. Her darkness grew in small ways, subtle but undeniable. She ignored calls. She let coworkers struggle. She didn't intervene when a mistake slipped through, nothing fatal, but enough to watch someone else scramble under pressure. And with every act of silence, every refusal, every no, Emily felt less like the woman she used to be and more like something new, something sharper. Walking home one night, the city's neon lights smeared across wet pavement, Emily caught her reflection in a store window. For a moment, she didn't recognize herself. Her face looked harder, her eyes darker, like someone carrying secrets. She leaned closer to the glass and whispered, "You're changing." And for the first time, she smiled. Emily was no longer invisible, at least not in the same way. People still overlooked her kindness, but now they noticed something else, her absence, her silence, her refusal. And that, she realized, gave her power. She started to play with it. At work, when a nurse panicked over a broken machine, Emily stood nearby and watched. The younger woman's hands shook as she fumbled with the buttons, calling for help. Emily could have fixed it. She'd done it countless times before, but this time she stayed quiet. Eventually, the woman figured it out, face flushed with embarrassment. Emily leaned over just enough to say, "You'll get the hang of it." Her tone sounded supportive, but her eyes didn't match. The woman flinched. Emily walked away smiling. The thrill of control grew sharper each day. She learned how to bend her silence into a weapon. When coworkers asked for help, she delayed just enough to watch their discomfort bloom. When patients complained, she offered less warmth, less comfort, forcing them to sit with their unease. No one could call her cruel. She still did her job, but she knew she was different now. She was choosing when to give and when to withhold. One night, Lauren called again. Emily almost didn't answer, but curiosity made her pick up. I'm desperate. I need you Friday night. Please, just a few hours." Emily swirled her glass of wine, voice calm. "I can't, Lauren." A pause. Then, "Why not?" "You never have plans. You just don't want to." Emily's lips curved into the faintest smile. "Exactly." The silence that followed was thick. Lauren's breath caught, like she couldn't believe what she'd just heard. Then her voice cracked. "You've changed. You're not the sister I knew." Emily ended the call without responding. She didn't cry. She didn't even feel guilty. Instead, she felt powerful, like she had finally stripped away the last illusion of who she was supposed to be. At the hospital, the shift deepened. She began noticing things she had ignored before, the mistakes, the cracks, the ways people depended on her. And instead of patching them, she left them. A wrong dosage logged, a chart misplaced, a request forgotten. Never enough to cause serious harm, but enough to watch the ripple of panic spread through the team. Each time, Emily felt her heartbeat quicken, adrenaline rising. She wasn't powerless anymore. She wasn't a doormat. She was the one deciding what happened. But late at night, lying in bed, she wondered, how far can this go? The thought lingered, pulsing like a dark rhythm in her veins. The moment that changed everything came on a rainy Thursday. A patient's family member cornered her in the hallway, voice sharp. "You're all useless. My father's been waiting for hours. Do you even care?" Emily stared at the woman, eyes calm, expression unreadable. Once she would have rushed to soothe her, to apologize, to fix everything immediately. But now she simply said, "Maybe you should be patient. We all have limits." The woman froze, stunned into silence. Emily walked away without looking back. For the first time, she didn't just withhold kindness, she weaponized her honesty. And the shock in the woman's face was intoxicating. That night, Emily sat by her window again, the city glowing below her. She touched the photo of her mother, but this time she didn't whisper promises of trying harder. Instead, she said softly, "I'm done being good." The photo stared back, unchanged. But Emily no longer sought its approval. Her reflection in the glass showed a woman she barely recognized, harder, sharper, alive in a way she had never been before. She smiled at herself, a smile that wasn't kind, a smile that carried the weight of everything she'd discovered. The edges had been tested, and soon she knew she would cross them. The rain hadn't stopped all week. It painted the city in silver streaks, dripping down hospital windows, soaking the sidewalks, and filling Emily's apartment with the faint smell of damp concrete. She liked it. The world felt heavier when it rained, like everything carried the same weight she did. By now, Emily barely resembled the woman she once was. She had stopped answering family calls altogether, her sister's desperate voicemails piling up. At work, she smiled less and observed more. People had stopped coming to her first, sensing something had shifted. But still, when things went wrong, their eyes flicked to her, waiting, expecting. And that expectation, more than anything, filled her with a slow, simmering rage. On Thursday night, the hospital was chaos. Flu season had clogged the halls, patients spilling over into every corner, families pacing, doctors barking orders. Emily moved through it all with eerie calm, like a shadow in the storm. In room 14, an older man with failing lungs struggled against his oxygen mask, panic in his eyes. His chart was simple: steady monitoring, keep him calm, adjust levels if necessary. Emily stood over him, her hand on the machine. The numbers blinked steadily, safe, manageable. But the man's wife, exhausted and frantic, snapped at her. "Can't you do more? Don't just stand there. Help him." Emily's eyes flicked to the woman. Something inside her tightened, cold and sharp. For years, she had given everything to people like this, demanding, ungrateful, blind to the cost. And what had it gotten her? Nothing. Her fingers hovered over the machine. A small adjustment, nothing dramatic, could send his levels into brief distress. Not death, not danger. Just enough to make them realize how fragile he was and how much power she held. Her pulse pounded. She could walk away. She could help. She could be who she used to be. Instead, she twisted the dial. The machine beeped sharply. The man gasped, body tensing, alarms flashing. His wife screamed, calling for help. Nurses rushed in, chaos erupting in seconds. Emily stood still, watching, her face perfectly composed. When another nurse shoved past her to correct the setting, Emily finally moved, pretending to assist, her voice calm. "It's okay. He's stabilizing." No one noticed, no one questioned. The crisis passed. But Emily knew she had done it. And for the first time, she felt not guilt but exhilaration. The raw rush of control surged through her, stronger than anything she had felt before. That night, she sat at her kitchen table, staring at her trembling hands. She thought she might cry, might break. But instead, she laughed. A hollow, shaky sound that echoed through the small apartment. "I did it," she whispered. "And nothing happened." The photo of her mother still sat on the table, silent witness to her unraveling. Emily turned it face down. The line had been crossed. She could never go back. Emily no longer flinched at the sound of alarms. She no longer rushed when people cried for help. Somewhere along the way, the panic that once consumed her had turned into a kind of music, a rhythm she could control, pause, or let play on as she pleased. Weeks had passed since that night in room 14. No one suspected her. Why would they? She was still Emily, the dependable nurse, the sister, the friend. Only now she had discovered something they couldn't see. The power in silence, the freedom in withholding. The hospital was overflowing again. A patient's monitor beeped steadily as a young intern panicked, flipping through charts. Emily stood in the doorway, arms crossed. "Can you help me?" The intern pleaded. Emily tilted her head. "You'll figure it out." Her voice was calm, almost kind, but her eyes didn't move. She watched as the girl's hand shook, as her face flushed with failure, until finally another nurse stepped in to fix the mistake. The intern slumped in relief. Emily smiled faintly. No one saw it, but she did. That smile wasn't kindness, it was hunger. At home, Lauren's number still appeared on her phone. Dozens of missed calls, dozens of unread messages. Emily no longer felt guilt. She didn't even feel irritation. She felt nothing at all. Her sister's words, "You've changed. You're not the same person," had become a mantra she repeated in her mind like a prayer. She wasn't the same. She never would be again. One night, she poured herself a glass of wine and walked to the window, staring out over the city. The lights blinked in patterns, hundreds of lives unfolding at once. She thought of all the people running themselves ragged, giving and giving, waiting for someone to notice their sacrifices. She almost pitied them. Almost. She raised her glass in a mock toast. Here's to the ones who break. Her reflection in the glass looked back at her, not the tired, soft Emily she used to be, but a woman with sharper edges, colder eyes, and a smile that carried both truth and threat. The monster wasn't in the shadows anymore. The monster was her. And yet, it wasn't a sudden transformation. There was no dramatic moment where Emily became unrecognizable. It was every yes that chipped at her spirit, every ignored plea for her well-being, every careless demand that pushed her further into exhaustion. Evil didn't arrive loudly in Emily's life. It crept quietly, patiently, until she no longer fought it, until she welcomed it. Now, when she walked through the hospital, people still saw her as a nurse, a helper, a giver. But Emily knew better. She was something else now, something darker, something stronger. And deep down, she wondered how many others walked the same path, one silent refusal at a time, one ignored call at a time, until kindness cracked and something unrecognizable slipped through. She closed her eyes, let the silence wrap around her like a second skin, and whispered to herself, "This is who I am now." And for the first time, there was no voice inside her to argue. If this story pulled you in, hit subscribe for more dark psychology tales. Like, share, and comment your thoughts. Your voice keeps these stories alive.